Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're digging into something lots of teams talk about, but maybe don't always nail: continuous delivery, or true continuous delivery.
Right, because there's a difference, isn't there? Lots of people deploy frequently, but is it really CD?
Exactly. You hear the term, but maybe you're still facing those, batched releases where features just sit waiting.
Or the QA team gets completely swamped right before a release goes out.
Yeah, and then boom, integration bugs pop up because everything got thrown together at the last minute. It feels slow, even if you're doing CI. Sound familiar?
I think it probably does to a lot of listeners, yeah.
So our mission today is to unpack what true continuous delivery really involves. We're looking at a case study, a company called DaisyHealth.
Yeah, they went on quite a journey. They even admitted they were doing CD in name only before they made changes.
So we're drawing from an article that details their whole process, the nitty-gritty of how they shifted gears. If your CI setup feels like it's only hinting at speed, stick around.
Okay, so let's paint the picture. What was life like at Daisy Health before all this?
Right, the before state. Think weekly, maybe bi-weekly deployments, but these weren't small drops.
No, they were batching multiple features together into these larger releases.
Which sounds efficient, maybe?
Yeah.
But it meant this frantic rush for QA at the end.
And inevitably, when you merge a bunch of stuff that hasn't been integrated along the way, you find issues.
Right, so more testing, retesting code that was probably finished individually weeks ago.
It's a common pattern, and they believed, like many teams do, that having humans manually approve releases was, safer and risk management.
A safety net, yeah. But it turned out to be the opposite, really.
It became a huge bottleneck, and it introduced its own kind of risk, the risk of just being too slow to fix things, slow to deliver value.
Okay, so what was the wake-up call?
Door metrics. That was the turning point.
The DevOps research and assessment metrics. Essential stuff.
Absolutely. They started tracking things like deployment frequency, lead time for changes, change fail rate, and time to restore service. And they plugged in their data from Jira, GitHub.
And the results were?
Eye-opening. Their cycle time, so from a dev starting work on a ticket to that code being live in production, it was over 15 days, sometimes significantly more.
15 days, wow. Okay, that's not fast.
Not even close. And the really interesting part, the bottleneck wasn't the coding itself.
No. Usually you think, oh, devs need to code faster or PR reviews take too long.
Right. But their devs were pretty efficient. PRs were okay. The real drag was the waiting time.
Waiting for what?
Waiting for the sprint to end, waiting for other features to be ready for the batch, waiting for that big final QA phase. It was all the time between the steps.
So optimizing one part, like coding, doesn't help if the whole system has these built-in delays.
Exactly. You have to look at the whole flow, end to end.
So the challenge became pretty clear then.
Yep. Cut that cycle time. Drastically, they aimed for half, but, and this is key, without making things riskier.
That's the tightrope walk, isn't it? Speed versus stability, where many teams stumble.
It's easy to go faster if you break things more often, but that's not the goal.
Okay, so this leads us to define what true CD meant for them based on this journey. What did it look like in practice, say, in 2025?
Well, first off, features deployed when they were done. Done, not at the end of some arbitrary 2-week cycle.
Right, release value as soon as it's ready. Makes sense.
Then, this was pretty cool, QA could test in the production environment.
Whoa, okay. How? Without users seeing half-finished stuff.
Exactly. We'll get into the how, but it involved feature flags. It meant testing with real infrastructure, real data, but safely shielded.
Game changer for QA, I bet.
Big time. Also, automation was key for information flow, like version tags in Git automatically syncing up with the status in Jira.
So no more manually updating tickets saying this shipped in version XYZ. Nope. All automated. And the final piece. Releases actually going live without someone manually clicking a deploy to prod button.
Fully automated hands-off deployments.
That was the ideal, yeah. Reducing errors, freeing up people.
And this is distinct from just having CI, continuous integration.
Oh, definitely. CI is the foundation, merging code often, running automated builds and tests. Essential.
But CI stops short of production, usually.
Right. True CD takes that automation all the way. CI builds the package, CD delivers it reliably and safely. CI dreams of CD, you could say.
I like that. And what's really interesting from their story is how they got there. It wasn't about buying a whole new platform.
No, not at all. They largely stuck with the tools they had. The focus was much more on discipline and automating the heck out of their existing processes.
Culture and automation over shiny new toys.
Pretty much. It's often more about the mindset, the discipline, the process engineering.
So let's peek behind the curtain. What was in their toolkit?
Okay, so Jira was central for work tracking, and they heavily automated its updates.
GitHub for code, obviously, but also used GitHub Actions to trigger workflows.
Okay.
TeamCity was their main CI/CD engine, orchestrating the pipelines.
Right.
For feature flags, that crucial piece for testing and prod, they used Growthbook.
Growthbook, got it.
Testing relied on Postman for APIs and Playwright for end-to-end browser tests.
Standard, solid choices there.
Yep. And they used a mix of custom scripts in TeamCity and GitHub Actions to kind of glue everything together.
And deployment target.
Kubernetes, specifically AWS EKS, and importantly, they documented everything in Confluence.
Avoiding the tribal knowledge trap.
Exactly. They knew that wasn't scalable or reliable. Documentation was part of the discipline.
Okay, let's break down how these pieces fit together. Starting with something seemingly small, PR labels.
Yeah, sounds minor, but it was fundamental. Every single pull request had to have the Jira issue number in its title. Mandatory.
Why so strict?
Traceability. It creates that instant, unbreakable link between the code change and the why the work item in Jira.
Makes sense. Less, what does this PR actually do again?
Precisely, and they automated it. A GitHub action would parse the title, grab the Jira number, and automatically tag the Jira ticket with the project name.
Nice. So no manual tagging needed in Jira afterwards?
Zero manual work there. It just happened. And they were clever about managing this automation.
How so?
They put the main GitHub Actions workflow script in a central repository.
So one place to update it for all projects.
Exactly. Then each project just had a tiny YAML file pointing to that central script. Simple, maintainable.
Smart. Okay, what about versioning? Keeping track of releases.
They used package.json in each project to store the version, pretty standard. Then a TeamCity build step would read that file and automatically set environment variables like nv.project_tag and mv.project_name.
So pulling the version and project name out automatically during the build.
Yeah, and those variables were then used everywhere for tagging the Git commit, for updating Jira, for logging. It ensured consistency.
Creating that information thread all the way through.
That's the idea. Traceability from commit to deployment.
Now, you can't do CD without solid testing, right? That was non-negotiable.
Absolutely non-negotiable. Postman for APIs, Playwright for the front-end E2E tests. These were critical gates.
Gates meaning?
Meaning they ran automatically in lower environments, and if any test failed, the pipeline stopped. No path to production.
RID build means no deploy.
Simple as that. They used TeamCity triggers so that as soon as a PR was merged, the build, tests, and potentially the release process kicked off automatically. Zero green tests meant zero chance of shipping.
Okay, and managing the actual release versions. Creating tags, bumping versions.
They leaned on Git flow for structure.
The Git branching model.
Yep. And their pipeline automated the release steps within that model. Check for changes, bump the version number using semantic versioning.
So like 1.2.3 to 1.3.0 if there's a new feature, or 1.2.4 for a patch.
Exactly. Then update package.json, commit, tag the release in Git, push everything all scripted.
Taking the manual error out of versioning.
Hugely important. The script would find the latest tag, figure out the next semantic version, run the git flow commands, update the file, commit, finalize the release. Very reliable.
And this automation extended to Jira too, right? Updating the tickets.
Yes. This was another key piece. After a release was tagged in Git, a custom script ran to update Jira.
Okay, what did that script do?
It would find all the Jira issues linked to that specific project release.
Yeah.
Then it would check their status, make sure they were actually ready, like in QA or done.
Yeah.
Checked subtasks too.
Right. Ensuring everything associated was complete.
And then it automatically added the release version number to the fix version field on those Jira tickets.
So you could look at any ticket and see exactly which release it went out in.
Instantly. No ambiguity. And they even built in a safety check. A DRY run mode for the script. So they could see what changes would be made in Jira before actually applying them.
Smart. A little preview.
Yeah. And if the version didn't exist in Jira yet, the script would create it automatically. The outcome was perfect visibility in Jira.
Okay, now let's talk feature flags. You mentioned Growthbook. This was their secret weapon.
That's what they called it, yeah. because it let them decouple deployment from the actual release.
Explain that decoupling bit again.
So the new code, the new feature, could be deployed to production infrastructure anytime. But it was hidden behind a feature flag in Growthbook.
So the code is live, but users can't see or interact with the new feature yet.
Exactly. Then QA could go into the production environment, turn on that specific flag just for themselves or for specific test users.
And test the feature on the real platform with real data connections, everything.
Precisely. Find bugs in the actual environment before exposing it to customers. While testing, QA would also write the new automated tests for that feature and add them to the suite.
So regression testing is built in for the future.
And only after QA signed off saying, yep, this feature works as expected, then the flag would be flipped on for everyone.
So the release is just flipping a switch in Growthbook, not another code deployment.
Often, yes. Or maybe a gradual rollout controlled by the flag. Growthbook allowed them to do things like target specific user groups, roll out to, say, 10% of users first, do A/B tests.
Lots of control there.
Yeah, and eventually remove the flag once the feature is fully rolled out and stable. It's that safety net that enables frequent deployments without the fear.
Ship often, release safely.
That's the mantra.
So what did all this achieve? Let's talk results. The metrics must have improved.
Dramatically. Remember that cycle time of 15+ days?
Yeah.
They got it down to 8 days. But at the 75th percentile, which is a solid measure, features getting to users much, much faster.
Wow, nearly cut in half or better. And deployment frequency.
Went way up. They hit an average of 8 deployments per week across their 20-something projects.
More than once a day on average.
Yeah.
Compared to bi-weekly before.
Huge difference. And merge frequency, how often PRs were getting merged, also climbed to about 13.5 per week. Many of those went live the same day.
So code wasn't just sitting around after being merged.
No more waiting. QA was unblocked. Testing could happen immediately post-deploy using the flags.
And the impact on users.
Faster feedback loops. Because features could be validated mid-sprint, they didn't have to wait 2 weeks to see if users actually liked something or if it worked well for them.
That agility is huge.
It really is.
So, reflecting on this, the DaisyHealth team felt the ideal CI/CD is boring.
Yeah, in a good way. Uneventful, safe, automated, not something that requires heroics or late nights.
And again, it wasn't some magic platform, but discipline, owning their tools, treating the pipeline like a product itself.
Absolutely. Constant refinement, automation, and clear processes. And the proof is in the pudding. Nobody wants to go back to the old way.
I can imagine. So, wrapping this up, the big takeaway from DaisyHealth seems to be that true CD is achievable.
Definitely. It's about that disciplined, automation-first approach. Releasing when ready, with safety built in through testing and flags.
It's more than just automating builds, it's automating the whole path to production safely.
Decoupling deployment from release is a really powerful concept there.
So a final thought for our listeners then. Take a hard look at your own release process.
Yeah. Is it truly CD? Or are there bottlenecks, manual steps, waiting periods you could automate?
Even small steps, right, was one thing. Maybe even a boring automation you could tackle this week.
Exactly. To move towards that safer, faster, more uneventful ideal, that's the challenge.